I truly believe self-driving labs will become a standard tool in material science and chemical research. It's really important to recognize that these self-driving labs are not here to replace scientists.
This is the Discovery Files podcast from the U.S. National Science Foundation. I'm Nate Potker. Artificial intelligence is driving breakthroughs in science and technology in high-impact areas such as materials discovery and drug development. We're joined today by Milad Abolhasani, the Alcoa professor and university faculty scholar in the Department of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering at North Carolina State University, where his research group is developing self-driving, autonomous robotic experimentation platforms for accelerated materials discovery. Dr. Abolhasani, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Nate. Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to talk about how we are reimagining the way science gets done with a little help from AI and automation and a lot of chemistry.
Right. A lot of AI out in the world right now. People are very excited about this. So my first question is the big one. How are advancements in artificial intelligence allowing you to make whole new discoveries in your lab?
Well, AI is fundamentally changing the way we run experiments and discover new materials in my lab. Traditionally, human scientists manually design experiments, set up reactions, run experiments, analyze the results, and then that takes maybe months or even years before we can make any insightful predictions from those results. In our lab, AI flips that model by learning from every experimental data that we generate and actively making decisions based on the data that it sees. So basically, AI algorithms in my lab acts like a brain for a self-driving lab. And with every set of experiments that we run, it trains a predictive model that can make a prediction about what should be the next material, the next condition to test in the next cycle. Through this closed loop autonomous experimentation, we're basically accelerating material discovery. And in our lab, AI is not just used for data analysis. AI is like a collaborator that can think with us and decide and learn, and even gets better and better with every experimental data that it sees. So it's like having a Spotify list for your science, that you choose the material property and the self-driving lab intelligently samples a lot of different possibilities until it finds the perfect hit. And with these self-driving labs, I would like to highlight here is that we're not just automating experiments. We're creating a lab that can think with us, and it evolves with us. So that's how AI is changing material discovery.
What is the self-driving lab?
I'm going to start with the self-driving Fluidic lab, and then I'm going to get to self-driving lab. So a self-driving Fluidic lab is exactly like what it sounds. It's a lab that can run itself, adapting and basically learning as it goes. Instead of human manually setting up reactions, preparing samples, setting up reactions, and then analyzing the results, a self-driving Fluidic lab can use flow reactors, automation, advanced sensors, and AI-assisted decision-making to automate the entire experimental cycle. We program these labs with a scientific goal. For example, we say you want to create a quantum dot with a specific emission color. And then this self-driving Fluidic lab figures out the most optimal way to basically achieve that goal. So that's how a self-driving Fluidic lab basically operate. And what makes the Fluidic aspect very unique and powerful is that everything happens in a continuous, miniaturized, and highly controlled reaction environment. By handling very small amounts of liquids with precision, we can speed up reactions while significantly reducing chemical consumption and waste generation. You can imagine a lab, for example, running hundreds or thousands of experiments before your coffee break. That's exactly what a self-driving Fluidic lab is about. But what's interesting, the lab itself doesn't need to take a break. It's continuously running, testing, learning, refining its methods, which allows us to explore very vast chemical spaces that were impossible to explore previously, just using manual experimentation methods.
When you're thinking about an experiment in a lab, like it might be a tabletop, what's kind of the scale of a self-driving lab?
Well, a self-driving lab, depending on the application for organic or inorganic material synthesis, it could be like a fridge size in terms of the size, a benchtop, the fridge, or it could be as big as an entire lab that you have robots walking around the lab, accessing different instruments. It depends on the application and the scope of your autonomous campaign that you're exploring. For example, if you need to have access to very advanced characterization tools, then you need to have a very large footprint that you have all of those accessible to your the synthesis robot. But if you need to have access to characterization units that or techniques that are very small, miniaturized, and you can do in situ characterization, the footprint can actually be very compact and small.
Could you give us some examples of experiments that are currently being done?
Right now in my lab, we have two focuses for our self-driving labs. One is catalyst discovery for specialty chemicals, and the other one is discovery and development of quantum dots. Quantum dots are semiconductor nanocrystals with very unique and tunable optical properties. They found applications in a variety of fields like LEDs, solar cells, lighting, photodetectors, even quantum engineering technologies. Our self-driving fluidic labs can fine-tune the size, shape, composition, and surface chemistry of these quantum dots to achieve precise control over their properties. What used to take months or years of trial and error, we can now do that in a single day. Now, beyond quantum dots, the same self-driving lab framework can be applied to a variety of different material discovery challenges. For example, we're also looking at using self-driving labs for catalyst discovery in pharmaceuticals and other areas. And the versatility of this platform comes from its ability to rapidly adapt its experimental strategies to different chemical systems. Which makes it an ideal tool for basically accelerated material discovery in chemistry and material science.
Part of the way this operates, you have a kind of a new technique or an updated technique from last time we had a discussion about the labs. What is the flow-driven data intensification technique?
It sounds complicated, but I'm going to try to explain what it actually means. Flow-driven data intensification is a very powerful technique that basically transforms how we collect and utilize experimental data. Instead of performing separate static experiments where we wait for a reaction to finish and then analyze the data, limiting the data throughput of your self-driving lab to only few experimental data per day. With this new technology, we are basically continuously flowing the reaction mixture in our flow reactors, and with our sensors, advanced sensors, we are continuously characterizing the materials that are being synthesized in real time in our flow reactors. Our sensors basically can capture how the properties of the synthesized materials evolve second by second, turning every moment of the experiment into a valuable data that we can use to train our AI models. If I want to simplify this flow-driven data intensification, is like binge watching thousands of chemical reactions at once. It's like switching from taking a single photo of your experiment with a single data to a high-speed movie of your reactions with this data intensification method. In the past, we used to take a single photo of our experiments with single experiments. Now we are recording high-speed movies of our reactions, and we are basically turning every frame into a valuable data that we can train our AI models on those experimental data. And the continuous flow approach means that now with a single experiment, we can generate hundreds to thousands of experimental data points compared to just, again, one experimental data in traditional settings. And the richness of this data stream allows our AI algorithms to build much more predictive models, much more accurate models of the material system that we're studying in a very short period of time. And this data intensification method is basically a key to accelerate the self-driving lab's learning process and helping it make smarter decisions faster.
Does this help with the kind of In the broader field, we hear a lot about data being an issue at this point, where there's less and less things to train it on. Does this kind of help you get around that a little bit, where it can sample it so much?
That's exactly why basically we developed this method. In the past, we could do maybe 1, 10, 20 experiments. Even with our most advanced automated robotic tools, we could do only few experiments a day. And we soon realized if we want to leverage the power of AI, we need to go to hundreds to thousands of experimental data per day that we can really unlock the power of AI in material discovery. And it's all about that decision-making process. We want to make sure that the brain of our self-driving lab can make the best decision for the next material, the next experiment that we want to run. And the more high-quality experimental data we can provide to these AI algorithms, the better and more accurate the decision you get out of those predictions is going to be.
What difference has this technique made to the performance of the Fluidic self-driving lab?
Well, the difference is night and day. You're solving year-long problems right now in a day. It's like speed with sustainability. Traditional steady-state flow experiments are like, as I said, snapshots of taking one snapshot of your experiment. You mix chemicals, you wait for the reaction to be finished, you reach a steady state, and you analyze the outcome. And there's like 20, 30, 40 minutes of wasted time between different experiments that you run. With this flow-driven data intensification, we basically completely remove that downtime and wasted time. The experiment never stops, and the system is always collecting real-time data. And with this method, we can now generate at least 10 times more information. In reality, it's like 100 to 1,000 times more data that we used to generate with our even most advanced reactors. Within the same time frame, basically, we can boost the data generation efficiency by at least 10 times, 100 to 1,000 times, which massively speeds up that discovery process. Now, more data from every experiment means that our AI collaborator, our AI co-pilot, has a richer data set to learn from, which leads again to more accurate predictions and fewer trial and error when you're looking for a new material with desired properties. And basically it reduces the discovery time, it reduces the cost of discovery, and it reduces the time to solution for the material problem that you're studying. And it's like having a very accurate GPS for your material discovery. It finds the fastest, most optimal and efficient route to destination.
What have been the challenges developing this bit, the actual flow data driven intensification there?
So I kind of alluded to the motivation that actually resulted in the development of this new technology, and that was about the quality and the quantity of experimental data that you need for your self-driving labs. So two of these main challenges that we faced were we needed more data, we needed more high-quality data. So a self-driving lab, as I said, is only as smart as the data it sees. Feeding it with sparse data is like trying to navigate a very complex path with a blurry map that you don't see where you're going. AI models are very powerful, but they really rely on the accuracy and the relevance of the data they receive. If the data is very noisy or incomplete, the AI can make misleading predictions. And that's not what you want to have in your self-driving lab. Another challenge in the broader field of self-driving lab is making them modular and adaptable. Every material discovery problem is unique. It brings its own challenges and it has its own requirements. Building a platform that can easily switch between different chemistries, like moving from quantum dot synthesis to catalyst discovery, requires adaptable hardware and software architectures. Additionally, there is a challenge in making sure human scientists can trust and understand the decision-making part of the AI is also really, really important. The interpretability and transparency are two of the essential parts of the that decision-making part of these self-driving labs to make sure these tools can become widely accepted in scientific research.
So thinking about that acceptance, do you think self-driving labs will become the standard?
Excellent question. I truly believe self-driving labs will become a standard tool in material science and chemical research. We're at the edge of this major transformation where the traditional way of conducting experiments with humans doing one experiment at a time will no longer be feasible for the speed of innovation that society demands. We don't have decades to find solutions to global challenges that we're facing. As these self-driving lab technologies become more user-friendly, more affordable, and more versatile, they're going to become essential for staying competitive in fields like energy, semiconductor, and healthcare. If I want to give you an example, in a few years, not having the self-driving lab, it will like having a business, not having access to internet. And the other thing I want to highlight here is that it's really important to recognize that these self-driving labs are not here to replace scientists. That's really important to highlight here. Instead, I think it's really important to think that these self-driving labs are like co-pilots. They are like collaborators to human scientists in accelerating discovery. The scientists will define the problem. The scientists will interpret the broader context of discoveries, while self-driving labs will handle the repetitive tasks and data-intensive experimentation tasks at the speed that no human lab can achieve that speed. We can envision like it's a future where AI, humans, and robots collaborate seamlessly to push the boundaries of scientific knowledge.
Have you seen any kind of pushback to these ideas in your academic work? Like, are any of the students kind of scared to get in there and try this, or is everybody more excited about it?
I think it's really important to go back to a comment that I made in the previous question, that it's important to recognize that these self-driving labs are going to be collaborators to human scientists. I think I always get the question, are these self-driving labs going to replace human scientists? And the answer is absolutely no. They're going to empower scientists to do more tasks, to speed the discovery. And instead of solving one problem within a 4 or 5 year PhD, we can actually maybe solve 10, 20 scientific problems. So when we recognize and accept that, then we can really start accepting these tools in a variety of disciplines to accelerate scientific research.
So I have to ask, how has NSF support impacted this progress for you?
Well, the support from the National Science Foundation has been absolutely vital for our work. One of the unique things about NSF in general is that NSF doesn't just fund projects, they typically invest in bold ideas that have the potential to change an entire field. And the development of our self-driving labs and the data intensification technique that we were talking about today, and these would have never been possible without NSF's support and NSF's commitment to high risk, high reward, fundamental science and engineering research. NSF's program, especially the ones focus on reaction engineering, advanced manufacturing, and AI-assisted scientific research, have provided my research group with the resources and flexibility to explore completely new research areas. If I want to summarize, in many ways, NSF's support has been a catalyst itself, enabling new multidisciplinary research ideas to turn into technologies like self-driving labs that can have broader societal impact.
As we round out the end of this conversation here, I want to ask you about the future for yourself. Where do you see this project going next?
Well, in next steps, we're aiming to scale and generalize the self-driving lab technology. Our goal is to extend the self-driving lab to beyond quantum dots to tackle material challenges, for example, in quantum engineering, in battery research, and even pharmaceuticals. We're also working on making these technologies more user-friendly, so researchers across different disciplines can easily adapt these powerful tools to their own research problems. Another exciting direction is about the broader access to these self-driving labs, where researchers could basically remotely operate cloud-based self-driving labs. By lowering the barriers to entry to this field of self-driving labs or autonomous scientific discovery, we hope to create a network of self-driving labs that could collaborate, they can share data, and accelerate scientific discovery. If we want to summarize, the long-term vision is that with these self-driving labs, we can move towards open, fast, and sustainable innovation ecosystems powered by AI, humans, and automation.
Special thanks to Milad Abolhasani. For the Discovery Files, I'm Nate Potker. Please subscribe wherever you get podcasts, and if you like our program, share with a friend and consider leaving a review. Discover how the U.S. National Science Foundation is advancing research at nsf.gov.